Eliah Donovan shoved the side door of the boutique open just as the paparazzi rounded the corner, their voices echoing down the rainy Manhattan street like a pack of wolves on a scent. "Lock it," he said sharply, water dripping from his dark coat as he turned to the stunned woman behind the counter. The boutique was small, cozy, and smelled faintly like lavender and leather. He hadn't even looked at the sign outside, just saw the open door and darted in. All he knew was that the flashes were gone and he could finally breathe. Okay," the woman said, blinking at him in confusion. Her voice was soft, but not timid. "You look like you just outran a SWAT team." "Close enough." Eliah leaned against the counter, running a hand through his wet hair. His heart was still racing and his custom Italian shoes were soaked. "Sorry, I'll be out of your way in a few minutes." The woman crossed her arms. She had dark curls tied up in a messy bun, a yellow tape measure looped around her neck, and a pencil tucked behind her ear. She was wearing a faded denim apron over a simple black dress. Pretty, but not trying to be. She didn't recognize him. That was the first miracle of the day. "You're bleeding," she said suddenly, pointing to the cut near his temple. "It's nothing. You bumped into something." "A trash can," he muttered, then looked at her again. "Do you normally let strange men bleeding from the head hide in your store?" "Only the ones who don't try to sell me crypto." She reached under the counter for a first aid kit. "Sit." He hesitated, but the chair beside the fitting room looked more comfortable than standing, and his head did sting. She knelt in front of him and gently dabbed the blood with a cotton pad. "You don't seem like the type to run." "Expensive suit. That watch probably costs more than my rent." He raised a brow. "You know watches?" "I know expensive," she said, lifting her eyes to meet his. "I used to work at Bergdorf's alterations department. Now I own this place." Eliah studied her. There was something about her that didn't match the chaos outside. She was calm, unimpressed. She treated him like a person, not a headline. "What's your name?" he asked. "Arielle," she replied. "Arielle Lawson." "Eliah." She didn't blink, didn't flinch, didn't ask, "Eliah Donovan?" "The Eliah Donovan." A slow smile formed on his face. "You really don't know who I am? You're the guy who bled on my floor." She stood and tossed the bloody cotton into the trash. "That's all I need to know." He laughed, for the first time in what felt like months. It was real and full and startled even him. "Thanks for the help," he said, rising. "If you have a back door, you're still tracked. And they're probably circling. You want to make it out of here without another cracked rib, you'll need to wait." Eliah looked toward the front of the store. The flashes were back. Paparazzi pressed against the glass like vultures. She walked to the window, pulled the blinds down, then turned to him. "You hungry?" He blinked. "What?" "I was about to heat up some leftover lasagna. You look like you haven't eaten since last Tuesday." He exhaled a laugh. "You're serious?" "Dead serious. And before you ask, yes, I made it from scratch. So if you're one of those weird anti-carb billionaires, now's your chance to run." He stared at her for a second. "You think I'm a billionaire?" "No," she said, narrowing her eyes. "I don't think. I know." He didn't respond. Just followed her into the tiny back kitchen where a microwave hummed and a kettle steamed on the stove. The room was warm and smelled like tomatoes and basil. He sat across from her at a small table as she slid a steaming plate toward him. "You really made this?" "Yeah. I live upstairs. This place is my whole life." He took a bite. His eyes widened. "You could sell this." "I do. To myself." For a long moment, they ate in silence. Then he said, "You're not going to ask?" "Ask what?" "Why I was running." "Nope." "No curiosity?" "None." He tilted his head. "You're a strange woman, Arielle Lawson. You're a strange man, Eliah. Whatever your last name is." He smiled again. "Donovan." Her eyes narrowed just slightly. "Donovan? Like Donovan Global?" "That's the one." She stared at him, then leaned back slowly in her chair. "So I just fed lasagna to the guy who owns half of Midtown. Just 1/3. The other 2/3 are in litigation. She laughed, and he found himself memorizing the sound. An hour passed. Then, too. It was dark outside now, and the paparazzi had given up. He stood by the door, coat folded over his arm. She stood a few feet away, arms crossed. "You're not what I expected." "Neither are you," he said, stepping closer. "You didn't try to take a photo. You didn't ask me for anything. I don't want anything." "Maybe I do." Her eyebrows lifted. "What does that mean?" He looked at her for a long moment. "It means I'd like to come back. If that's okay." Arielle's expression didn't change, but her voice softened. "You can come back, but no entourage. No security. Just you." He nodded. "Just me." And then he stepped out into the night. But he left something behind. His heart. Eliah returned 3 days later, no fanfare, no security, no polished driver waiting by the curb. Just him in a dark navy hoodie and jeans that looked suspiciously unbranded for a man who'd once been photographed wearing a custom cashmere coat on the Amalfi Coast. Arielle was bent over a mannequin, pinning pleats into a half-finished evening gown when the door chimed softly. "You're late," she said, not looking up. Eliah stepped further inside, his hands tucked into his pockets. "Wasn't aware I had an appointment." "You didn't," she said, finally turning toward him. "But I was still taking bets you wouldn't come back." "I don't lose bets." She gave him a quick once-over, then returned to her work. "You're dressed like someone who's trying not to be recognized." "It's working." The barista at the corner tried to sell me a rewards card. "That's tragic." He smiled faintly and wandered the boutique. It was quiet, save for the muted hum of the steamer in the back and the rustle of fabric beneath Arielle's hands. He glanced at a photo on the wall of a younger Arielle beside an older woman, both holding scissors and laughing mid-project. "She taught you?" he asked, nodding toward the photo. "My grandmother," Arielle replied without hesitation. She ran a tailoring shop in Harlem for 30 years. Best buttonhole work in the city, hands down. "I used to sit under the table while she hemmed wedding dresses." "You still live upstairs?" "I do." He paused. "You ever think of expanding?" "I've thought about it," she said cautiously, pinning another fold. "But I'd have to hire staff, lose control of the gowns. Every piece here is mine start to finish. If I scaled up, I'd be managing people instead of sewing, and I'm not sure that's the dream." Eliah leaned against a display shelf, studying her. "Most people would say your dream is small." "Most people don't know the cost of peace," she said, setting her pin cushion down. "You can keep your big boardrooms and 20-floor offices. I've got a kettle, a sewing machine, and a front door no one chases me through." His gaze lingered on her a moment longer than necessary. "I'm not used to this." "To what?" "Being invisible." "Maybe you should try it more often," she said, brushing past him to adjust the lighting near the window. "It's good for the ego." He moved to follow her. "So what do you do when you're not stitching silk and saving billionaires from mobs?" "I read. I cook. I fix things." He tilted his head. "Fix things?" "Zippers. Radios. Broken hearts if they show up on time and apologize." He laughed short, surprised. He hadn't meant to. Arielle glanced at him. "What about you? Do you ever do something that doesn't make money?" He leaned against the frame of the window. "Sometimes I go sailing. I used to write music in college." "Nothing good." "Why'd you stop?" "I got busy." He trailed off, then added, "and I got scared it might be the one thing I couldn't control." She studied him, brows slightly furrowed. "That's honest." "Careful," he said, "I might start telling you all my secrets." "I wouldn't recommend that. I'm terrible at pretending I care about rich people problems." "I believe you," he said with a soft edge. A delivery truck rumbled outside, and she went to sign for a box of fabric rolls. As she wrestled them through the door, Eliah stepped forward. "Let me," he offered, taking the heavier end. She eyed him. "You sure? Wouldn't want to ruin your disguise with a hernia." "I'll risk it." They carried the rolls to the back room, where bolts of blush satin and deep navy velvet leaned precariously against the wall. As he set the last one down, she said, "So what's the real reason you came back?" "I liked the lasagna." "Try again." I liked the quiet. She arched an eyebrow. He let out a breath. I liked you. Arielle didn't respond immediately. She was quiet for a moment, adjusting one of the rolls so it wouldn't tip. Then she said, you don't even know me. I know enough to want to. She met his eyes, and this time she didn't look away. That's a dangerous thing to say, especially when you're used to people giving you everything you ask for. I don't want everything. Not anymore. Then what do you want? He took a step closer. Dinner. Her lips parted slightly in surprise. Dinner. Not at a hotel. Not on a yacht. Just somewhere you go. Somewhere real. She considered that, tilting her head. You know, if you show up in a chauffeured car, I'm going to turn you right back around. No car, he said. No suit. Just me. She folded her arms, amused. You even know how to be just you? I'm figuring it out. Arielle tapped her fingers against her forearm. Friday. 7. We're something that doesn't cost more than my rent. He held up a hand. Deal. And just like that, she turned back to her sewing machine, already pulling thread through the needle. Eliah lingered a moment longer, then let himself out into the soft glow of the early evening. As he walked down the block, he didn't notice the man leaning against the newsstand, watching him disappear into the crowd with narrowed eyes and a camera hanging low at his side, lens cap off. Eliah arrived at the restaurant 10 minutes early. It wasn't the kind of place he usually went. No valet, no maitre d' in a tuxedo, no wine list that required a sommelier to decipher. The walls were painted a warm terracotta and the lighting was soft but not theatrical. The smell of garlic and roasted vegetables lingered in the air, and the tables were close enough to hear your neighbors but not so close you had to acknowledge them. He sat at a corner booth dressed in a dark Henley and chinos, the most anonymous outfit he owned. No one gave him a second glance. That felt new. When Arielle stepped inside, she didn't scan the room. She walked straight to him like she'd known exactly where he'd be. You clean up okay? She said, slipping into the seat across from him. You say that like I usually don't. You usually look like someone who hasn't carried his own luggage since college. He grinned. That's fair. She set her leather bag beside her, and the waitress arrived with menus. Arielle didn't open hers. I already know what I want, she said. They do this eggplant dish with pine nuts and lemon zest that should be illegal. Then I'll have the same. I trust your criminal taste. She laughed once, then looked at him with a different kind of curiosity. So what's your plan here? He leaned back slightly. What do you mean? You're not a man who does things without intention. You didn't stumble into my store and decide 3 days later that you wanted to play normal. So what's your endgame, Eliah? He rested his forearms on the table. What if I told you I don't have one? I'd say you're lying, she replied, lifting her water glass. But I'm listening. He watched her for a moment, then said, I've been in boardrooms where people pretended to care about saving the planet, when really they were arguing over who got the bigger slice. I've been in hotel rooms that cost more per night than what some families make in a month. I've built a life that's impressive on paper and exhausting in reality. And now you want, what? Lasagna and small talk. I want something that doesn't feel staged, he said. I want a conversation that doesn't end with someone asking for a donation or a favor or a photo. I want something real. Their food arrived, steaming and fragrant, and they fell quiet for a while. Arielle took a bite, then said, You're not used to people telling you no, are you? Not often, he admitted. But you don't seem offended by it. I'm learning. She tilted her head. Why me? He didn't hesitate. You didn't flinch. Flinch? When I walked in, bleeding and chased, you didn't panic. You didn't fawn. You just handled it. And then you fed me. That's a low bar. It's higher than you think. She chewed thoughtfully, then asked, What do you do when you're not running from cameras? I've been restructuring one of our subsidiaries, a tech firm that lost its CEO. Sounds clinical. It was supposed to be, but the guy had a daughter, 10 years old. She wrote me a letter. Arielle blinked. She wrote you a letter? Said she didn't want the people buying her dad's company to throw away his desk. Said she'd carved her initials into the bottom. Arielle's expression softened, her fork pausing mid-air. I kept the desk, Eliah said. Had it moved to my office. She's coming to see it next week. There was a long pause, then she said, You're not who I thought you'd be. I'm not sure who I am most days, he replied quietly. They finished dinner without rush. No phones between them, no interruptions. Arielle paid attention like most people didn't. She didn't fill silences to avoid them. She let moments breathe. Outside, a breeze had picked up. The streetlights cast long shadows, and the air smelled faintly of rain that never came. He walked her to the corner, where the city split into two moods, one headed toward noise and neon, the other toward quiet streets and dark windows. Do you want me to get a car? He asked. I live 4 blocks that way, she said, pointing. I'll walk. He hesitated. Can I see you again? She studied him. You're not used to waiting for answers either. I'll wait. She didn't smile, but her voice was warmer than before. We'll see. He watched her walk until she turned the corner. Then he pulled his phone from his pocket and dialed. Get me Marcus, he said once it picked up. There's someone following me. I want to know who they are and who they work for. He hung up before the reply came. Because across the street, just beyond the parked cars, a man with a camera was watching again. But this time Eliah was watching too. Arielle didn't hear from Eliah for 3 days. Not a call. Not a knock. Not a single bouquet with a cryptic note, which, frankly, she half expected. She told herself she didn't care. She kept her head down, stitched through late hours, and told herself she was better off not getting pulled into someone else's orbit, especially someone whose life spun at 1,000 miles an hour. Then, on the 4th day, her doorbell rang. Not the boutiques. Her apartments. Upstairs. The one no one used unless it was an emergency or a mistake. She padded barefoot across the hardwood, wearing an oversized sweatshirt and holding a lukewarm cup of herbal tea. When she opened the door, Eliah was standing there in the hallway holding a paper bag in one hand and a single, tiny cactus in the other. There was a sushi place down the block, he said, glancing at the bag. And you strike me as someone who would appreciate a plant that doesn't die easily. She crossed her arms. You disappeared for days and came back with raw fish and a cactus? He held her gaze. I got followed. Again. I didn't want to bring that mess to your doorstep. Her expression shifted slightly, but her voice stayed cool. So you ghost instead? I was trying to protect you. I don't need protection, Eliah. I need honesty. He looked down at the cactus, then offered it. This thing's harder to kill than most marriages in Manhattan. I figured it was a decent peace offering. She took it, reluctantly, and opened the door wider. Come in. But if that sushi has avocado, you're eating it by yourself. They sat on her couch, the city humming faintly through the windows. Her apartment was small but full of character books stacked sideways on every surface. A wall of postcards from places she'd never been, and a cat curled up in a laundry basket as if it paid rent. Eliah laid out the food on the coffee table, his movements slower than usual. Tired. You look like hell, she said, biting into a roll. Thanks. I've been in meetings all week, and dealing with whoever's been tailing me. Did you figure out who it is? He nodded once. A freelance photographer. Used to work for a gossip site. He's been following me since the board fallout last year. Why now? Because I disappeared for a few hours and didn't come out of a building with tinted windows. Whoever's paying him thinks I'm hiding something. She leaned back into the couch. Are you? He looked at her. I'm not hiding from them. I'm trying to find out what I want when no one's watching. She didn't answer right away. The cat jumped onto the armrest beside her and stared at Eliah like it didn't trust him. Look, he said, setting his chopsticks down. I know I'm not easy. I come with more baggage than an international terminal, but I haven't been able to stop thinking about you. Arielle's voice was quiet. Why? Because you make me feel like I don't have to perform, he said. Because when I'm with you, I don't have to be Donovan Global. I can just be Eliah. And that's terrifying. and rare. And I don't want to lose it. She exhaled slowly. You know, I'm not going to uproot my life. I'm not going to move into some penthouse and pretend I belong at black tie galas. I like my world small. I don't want to change that, he said. I want to fit into it if you'll let me. She studied him. No private chefs. No assistants delivering earrings in velvet boxes. No earrings. No velvet. No sweeping me off to Paris without asking. Only if you say yes first. There was a long silence between them. The kind that wasn't uncomfortable but heavy with decision. Finally, Arielle said, if you're serious about this about us, then I need you to show me. Not with gifts. Not with headlines. With time. Consistency. Showing up. I can do that. Can you? She asked. Because you've never done anything slow before. He held her gaze. Maybe I've never wanted to. She didn't smile. But she didn't look away either. The next 2 weeks passed like a strange dream, equal parts surreal and surprisingly normal. Eliah started showing up every evening. Sometimes with takeout. Sometimes with nothing but a story from his day and an eagerness to hear hers. He didn't bring attention. He didn't bring drama. He brought himself. One night, she was hemming a dress while he read on her couch, both of them wrapped in the kind of silence that only comes when two people are entirely comfortable in the same space. He looked up suddenly. I want to take you somewhere. No jets, she warned. No jets, he agreed. Just a rooftop. A few evenings later, he led her up a narrow staircase to the top of a brownstone she didn't recognize. There, under a string of fairy lights and a sky full of stars, was a table set for two. Real candles. Her favorite pasta. A record player spinning something soft and old. You did this? She asked, stunned. I cooked. It's terrible, he said. But I tried. She sat speechless for once. I know I can't give you normal, he said, sitting across from her. But I can give you real. She looked around, then at him. This is real. He reached across the table, took her hand. Arielle Lawson, I didn't expect to find you. I didn't expect to want this. But I do. All of it. You. Us. Whatever this becomes. She blinked, caught off guard by the emotion in his voice. I love you, he said. The wind caught the end of the tablecloth, lifting it just slightly. Somewhere in the distance, a siren wailed, but up here, it might as well have been another world. Arielle swallowed. You're not always going to be easy. I know. And I'm going to call you out when you start slipping into your billionaire autopilot. Please do. She squeezed his hand. Then you're mine. He stood and pulled her to him, slow and steady, and kissed her like the world had paused just for them. And for once, it felt like it had. Arielle stood frozen in the middle of her boutique, the morning sun spilling in through the shop windows, her phone still warm in her hand. Say that again, she said, her voice low. On the other end of the line, Eliah's tone was calm but clipped. The photographer broke into your back office. I had someone watching the store from across the street. He's fine, but I need you to meet me. Now. Her pulse kicked up. Is he still there? No. Police have him. But I need to explain in person. She locked the front door behind her, flipped the sign to closed, and walked briskly toward the address he'd given, an unassuming brownstone in the West Village. She'd never been to this one before. When she arrived, Eliah opened the door before she could knock. He looked different, more alert, not frantic, but sharper somehow. Inside, the space was warm, high-ceilinged, and quiet. She followed him through a hallway lined with black and white photographs and into a sunlit room with tall windows and a long wooden table covered in papers. He gestured for her to sit. I wasn't going to tell you this, but after today, you deserve the truth. She folded her arms. I'm listening. He sat across from her, hands clasped. The photographer's been working with someone on the Donovan board. Someone who doesn't like that I've stepped back from the company. They see you as a threat. Arielle's brows drew together. A threat. They think you're a distraction. That I'm planning to hand over control and disappear, and they're trying to use you to discredit me. Photos. Fabricated stories. The works. She stared at him. And are you stepping away? I've been planning to, he said. But not because of you. Because I want to live a life I recognize when I wake up. She leaned forward. You should have told me. I didn't want to pull you into that chaos. I thought I could shield you. But that was a mistake. Arielle's gaze didn't waver. So what now? I'm resigning from the board. Officially. I've already filed the documents. He took a breath. But I'm not running away. I'm building something new. Something with purpose. She tilted her head, cautious. And where do I fit into that? He reached into the folder beside him and pulled out a rendering. It was an architectural sketch of a building, clean lines, open space, glass and brick and warmth. This is the creative space we're opening in Brooklyn. Designers. Artists. Independent creators. No corporate strings. I bought the building last week and I want part of it for you. A full floor. Studio, showroom, everything you need. She looked down at the sketch, then back at him. You think you can just give me a business? No, he said. I think I can invest in yours. You keep complete control. I just provide the space and resources. No strings. No contracts. Just a chance to grow on your terms. Arielle's voice was quiet. Why would you do that? Because I love you, he said, his voice steady. And I want your dreams to be as big as you want them to be. Not as small as the world expects them to be. Her eyes shimmered, but she didn't blink. You're not trying to change me? I'm trying to stand beside you. She pushed the sketch back, rose from her chair, and walked to the window. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then, softly, I never wanted to fall for someone like you. I know. I didn't want the cameras. The complications. The scale of you. I know that too. But I did, she said, turning back to face him. And I don't regret it. He stepped toward her. Does that mean you'll take the space? I'll think about it. Eliah grinned. That's a yes in your language. She lifted her chin. You'll learn to translate. They walked together through the rest of the brownstone. On the second floor, he showed her the rooftop terrace he'd just had redone. No lights, no table, just open sky and the sound of the city below. He turned to her. I want to ask you something. But not here. Not yet. She raised an eyebrow. Why not? Because when I ask, I want it to be when you're ready. When you know I'm not going anywhere. She looked out over the rooftops, then back at him. I already know. That evening, he took her to the Brooklyn building. It still smelled like paint and sawdust, but it felt alive. He showed her the floor he'd mentioned, sunlight pouring through the wide windows. The city stretched out in every direction. Arielle stepped into the center of the room. This is mine. If you want it. She turned slowly, taking it in. I do. He stepped up behind her, wrapped his arms around her waist, and whispered, Then it's yours. A month passed. Arielle's new studio opened with no press, no ribbon cutting. Just a quiet gathering of friends and fellow designers, a jazz trio in the corner, and trays of homemade pastries from the bakery next door. Eliah stood beside her, wearing a dark, simple suit, no tie. He talked less now, listened more. He didn't check his phone once. When the night wound down, he pulled her aside into the corner of the studio where her first finished dress hung on display. He reached into his coat pocket and held out a small, velvet box. Her breath caught. Eliah, he opened it. Inside was not a ring, but a delicate gold chain with a tiny pair of scissors at the center, studded with a single diamond. I know you don't want flash, he said. And I know you don't want to be swept away. But I do want to ask you to walk beside me. Every day. Through the noise. Through the quiet. Through all of it. He took her hand. Will you marry me? Arielle stared at the necklace, then at him. Only if I get to make my own dress. He laughed and she smiled wide and real and threw her arms around him. Yes, she whispered against his shoulder. Absolutely yes. They married 6 months later. Not in a ballroom. Not on a yacht. But in the garden behind the brownstone, surrounded by friends, flowers, and the smell of fresh bread from the neighbor's open window. She wore a gown she stitched herself, simple, elegant, with a row of tiny glass buttons down the back. He wore the same suit he'd worn to her studio opening. Their vows were quiet, honest, full of promise. And when the night ended, they didn't ride off in a limousine. They walked home. Together. Hand in hand. Home not to a palace, but to a life they built side by side. Arielle's scissors hung from her neck, catching the light with every step.